Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my new video where we are going to be going over 5 tips that are going to make you a better Blitzcrank player. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name is LowFit. I do educational content, I do guide videos, tip videos, and I also stream over on Twitch. If you would like to ask me any questions live there, I'd love to help you out. I'm trying to make this channel as educational as possible and try and really help out those people that are stuck in bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. If you're curious about my experience, I play in around the diamond elo. I'm diamond 3, I think, right now. And I mostly play mid, top, and support. So if you have any questions about those roles, I am particularly well equipped to help you out with those. The reason I wanted to do a video on Blitzcrank here is because I think he is a great pick when you are getting auto-filled or when you are looking to have a high impact laning phase, particularly in the lower elos. I think Blitzcrank is rather effective where people might struggle to play against the hook champions. Also, I'm going to put a link to my Discord down below. It's a great community of people that try and help each other out as much as possible. It can get a little bit memey, get a little bit funny sometimes, but it's a great group of people, and I heavily encourage you guys to come join the Discord. And without further ado, let's jump into tip number 1. Alright, and getting into tip number 1, I want to go over 3 different ways you can look to increase your hook accuracy, which is just so important. It is the essential part of Blitzcrank's hook. First up, you do not want to be one of those Blitzcranks that always look for the max rank pull, because this is going to give the enemy more time to react. If there is any way you can close the distance, say they're juking back and forth, which a lot of people tend to do. They don't just kind of run away when you run straight at them. A lot of them look to outplay your hook. So what you want to do is just try and position yourself in the best way possible, and that will be by getting as close to them before you look to throw it at them. Now, Blitzcrank really thrives on being able to throw hooks at unexpected players. So how you can play unexpectedly when you're in Blitzcrank, obviously having the Fog of War is going to be a large advantage, and the second way to kind of catch someone off guard is to run at one champion but then hook the other one, because they think that you are focusing that person and that you're going to hook the other one. So always look to be unexpected with Blitzcrank. Obviously other runes that can help you with that is the Hex Flash can help when you're just kind of Hex Flashing out of a bush and looking for a hook there. Let's look at a third way you can effectively increase your hook accuracy, and that would be by throwing it at targets with limited range of movement. Against champions that are against the wall is going to be extremely easy, because this is a no-miss situation with your hook unless they flash. Because of your hook's rather fat hitbox, it can cover the entire range of movement of the cast time of your hook. So always look for these situations if the enemies are dumb enough to condense themselves against the wall. It's just going to be a terrible situation for them. If you're playing against a hook champion, it's always good to stay in the middle of the lane, because it's going to give you the largest range of movement. So again, you always want to look for hooks at a closer range. You want to be expected, throwing it from Fog of War or at the champion that thinks that they are safe. And third, you want to look at champions that are against the wall. That is just going to make an extremely easy hook. You always want to line yourself up with them, though. You do not, if someone is against a wall, you don't want to approach them from an angle like this where they can go back and forth. You want to approach them from an angle that just makes it kind of like a bowling alley, right? Where they're just straight in front of you, and it's going to be a rather easy hook. So that will wrap up tip number 1. And guys, if you have your own tips for Blitzcrank, I love when I see other people comment their tips, and we just kind of provide like a little bit of a forum for people that really enjoy the champion. And yeah, so if you have any of your own tips for Blitzcrank, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Alright, and getting into tip number 2 with Blitzcrank. There are 2 ways to effectively play Blitzcrank. One would be very heavily lane focused, and the second would be very heavy on the roam focus when you're playing Blitzcrank. Now, when you're playing hook champions, you always want to rush boots, because it's going to provide you, whether you're playing lane focused or roam focused, you really want to be able to move around at quite a quick speed. And as I was saying in the earlier tip, close the distance as soon as possible before throwing out your hook. So if you want to be lane focused, I'd probably recommend the Hex Flash, and just really look for those unexpected dashes out of the Fog of War, whether it be from here or here or here, and looking for hooks there. But my favorite playstyle is the roam playstyle, because Blitzcrank can really have a large effect around the map. These runes are really going to help you out with things like Celerity and Water Walking. Celerity stacking quite well with your Overdrive, and the Water Walking is going to provide you with quite a bit of roam potential. Everyone loves when you play Blitzcrank to just come into the mid lane and start affecting this lane, because they have quite a big amount of ability to affect the map. Because you're in the mid lane, you're able to roam bot quite easily and top quite easily. So helping out your mid lane get stronger can have a ripple effect that can help the rest of the map. So just understanding the different playstyles with Blitzcrank is very strong. Also, you can look for ganks where you're wrapping around the tower really quickly. Because of Aftershock being one of the best runes, Blitzcrank is actually quite tanky, so you can look to do dives when you are playing on the Blitzcrank champion. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, but do not limit yourself to only looking for hooks in lane. I think this is a common trap for low elo players. So roaming can be extremely effective with Blitzcrank, and obviously getting control wards and running a sweeper are going to help amplify your ability to roam. I'm not saying that you should only look for roams at all times, but if they're playing very safe, say they're a Morgana support and an Ezreal ADC, a very hard lane to get a lot of good, strong hooks on because of the Black Shield and due to the fact that the Ezreal can just eat out of it. So just adjust your playstyle for the enemy lane. If they're playing something like Twitch Janna, you might want to play a little bit more lane focus and really want to shut down that hyper-scaling ADC that is immobile. So just kind of look at the enemy teams, think about how the lane is going to play out. Hey, I have a Draven, I should really kind of be lane focused this game, or like, hey, I have an Ezreal, why don't we just roam a bit because everyone hates that champion. So with that, we'll wrap up tip number 2 for Blitzcrank. Okay, and getting into tip number 3. This is going to be a little bit, further expanding on the first tip, and that is, if you can ever get a power fist before your hook, it is going to be extremely strong, because what the power fist is going to do is it's going to ensure your hook landing, because it gives you that little bit of a knock up in the air and they're unable to move at that time. So understanding that if at any point in the lane when they're a little bit too far up, say you got early Moby boots, they don't have any boots at the point, you can always look to do the overdrive into a power fist into a hook. This is going to ensure the hook, rather than just kind of throwing a hook out from like mid-range. Maybe they will dodge it and you will just maybe struggle a little bit to get into the correct position against them. So always look, if you are able to power fist before you use your rocket grab, just because it will help you with increased accuracy. Another thing that is going to help you with the increased accuracy is if you are chasing people down and say you have a jungler coming and looking to gank, a lot of the times that's actually really strong for you to flash in and then silence and then E and then Q them away after they look to dash away. So how you want to look at your static field is, obviously it does have very high base damages, but it also prevents people from using their flash away when they're silenced. So you can look to set up some really strong ganks for your ally jungler. If you flash in, R, and then E them up, wait for the flash, and then Q them. It's going to just be a extremely hard gank to get away from, because they're using all of their defensives and you are countering them quite a bit. So always look to prevent their movement and their really panic button of their flash with your static field is going to be extremely strong. If you have any questions about this tip, or just kind of how to play out different lanes in general, I'd love to help you out in the comments down below. Just let me know what kind of lane you are struggling with. Okay, and jumping into tip number 4, I want to talk about a very common thing that is kind of odd, that a lot of people find very frustrating, but it actually helps out hook champions quite a bit, and that is kind of how sometimes it can look like your hook is missing, but it attaches onto the champion, as the skill shot is going to be, if you look at the reticule, it is fatter than the actual hook, or at least the chain of the hook. So if you can see right here, this is a miss, but if this hits, it's going to attach onto the enemy champion, even though it looks like it's going to miss. Is going to hit because of kind of how the hitbox works. So always look to take the advantage with this, is that you're able to miss a little bit with your hooks, and it's going to attach a little bit. See, that's a little bit too far off, but if you throw it kind of to the side of it, you are still going to land your hook. So just kind of taking this into an account is going to help you out with your overall hook game, is knowing that, hey, I can throw it a little bit farther to the right if I think they're going to move to the right, but if they even move to the left or kind of run in a straight line, it still is going to attach to the enemy champion. So just keep this in mind. I heavily recommend for you guys to go into the practice tool, maybe do like 4 or 5 minutes and see what the kind of how the hooks will attach even if they miss, and just get a really good understanding of the skill shot reticule and how even if it misses, I'm literally throwing every single one of these hooks far left, but they are still landing, which can make people very tilted. They're like, how did that hook land? It was completely to the side of me. It is going to be a just a very good tool for you to have a good understanding of. If you have any questions about this, again, you can hit me up in the comments down below, but the practice tool is really your best friend when you have a high impact spell that you really need to get used to. For example, the Blitzcrank Q or something like a Fizz E is just really great to practice and get a good understanding of it. Alright, that'll wrap up tip number 4. Alright, and getting into tip number 5, we're going to talk about team fighting, which is extremely important on Blitzcrank. Now, the last thing you would want to do as Blitzcrank is to pull in something that is extremely effective and wants to get onto your backline. So, for example, you wouldn't really want to hook a Malphite or a Darius and get them and give them an extra gap closer that they did not know that they would have before, unless your team is rather far ahead and can burst anything out rather quickly. So, how you want to play out team fights is you want to look for places where you can deny vision and people don't understand where you're coming from. As I've said earlier in the video, you really want to be as unexpected as possible when playing Blitzcrank. So, how you can effectively do that is you always want to look to hook high priority targets. These are relatively going to be squishy champions that are in the backline. For example, maybe this is a Malphite, that's an Ezreal, and this is a Xerath. So you obviously want to hit these two. You want to position yourself in a way that is going to be hard for them to understand where you're coming from. If you were just a champion, or if you're just a really poor Blitzcrank player, is just going to be like, okay, I need to hook an enemy player to win this team fight. They're going to just be running straight at people and just be the most obvious player in the world. A more talented Blitzcrank player might be letting the frontliners engage with each other and then coming out of the vision and looking for hooks, or for maybe just waiting a little bit and looking for hooks on the side of the enemy. So always try to be as unexpected as possible. Flanks work extremely well with Blitzcrank, particularly if you have an assassin. Say you have something like a Talon or a Kha'Zix that loves jumping in and assassinating the backline. You really want to help augment that, because overall, in essence, you are a pick champion. You are not something like a Nautilus or a Leona that might really excel at being a frontline champion. You need to play to Blitzcrank strengths, and that is getting picks and attacking the most vulnerable members of the enemy team. So always look for positioning when you are playing the enemy champion. Also, letting the team fight play out a little bit, not always looking to be the engaging champion, can help quite a bit. And when you are playing in these team fights, it's really important to understand when people are locking themselves into a frame. So I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like when a champion is locked into a frame. This is when Blitzcrank is getting locked in. It is when he is about to auto, right? So that is going to be a perfect time to look for, say this is a Teemo right there. He is just winding up an auto or a Q on one of your allied champions. Right when he looks to auto, you throw out your hook there, because it's going to be extremely hard for him to react, as he is already freezing himself at a certain spot. So those are the couple of things you want to look to do in the team fights. Again, you want to look for flanks. You want to look to be less obvious. You want to look to be as tricky as possible and be as unexpected as possible. And then third, you want to look for people locking in animations, like when they have a channel on their ability and they have to stay still. Something like a Xerath Q, where they have to be they're slowed down a little bit. This is going to be a perfect time to throw out your hook. You really do not want to use your hook nilly-willy, as even with max CDR, it is still 10 seconds, and you might only have the ability to get 2 hooks off in a team fight. So really make sure that you're your high impact abilities are yielding the most benefit to your team. That's going to wrap up my guide, guys, for the 5 tips that every Blitzcrank needs to know. If you enjoyed the content, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, guys, take it easy.